Alright, hello and welcome to a very special plain old gaming video. This is a basic Link Tunic tutorial, costume making. I haven't done any of these videos yet, so this is kind of a trial run. So I hope you guys enjoy this. So let's get into it. So first off, we're going to be using a simplicity costume pattern. Any tunic pattern should do. You can also make it like a t-shirt, but this is the pattern I'm using and I'm going to be showing you how to do it with this pattern. So we're going to need our pattern. We're going to need fabric that gives you suggestions. I don't know exactly what kind of fabric I have, but it's like a twill weave, like jeans, but it's just plain fabric and it's not denim. Other than that, you want it to be a bit thick, not stretchy. Stretchy is really hard to work with. You want it to hold its own shape, so yep, just get some nice, solid, easy to sew fabric. Doesn't have to be anything special. Then you'll need a measuring tape to measure your size, and some cord, some leather cord. I got this at Walmart, but this is just for like necklaces. It's just that kind of a thread or cord. It's leather and it's really nice stuff. That way it doesn't fray when you cut it. And of course you'll need trim as well to go around the neck and sleeves and bottom and stuff of the tunic to make it look a little less boring. Then we have some grommets, which are for the holes to thread the cord through to make the X stitching all around. I needed 2 packs. Each of those have 14 in them. Of course match them. You can already tell that I'm not making the green tunic, I'm making a red Goron tunic. Not really based off Ocarina of Time, but more of the new style. But yeah, I needed almost the entire 2 packs of 14, so you decide how many you need. And we need some pins, so you're going to need lots of pins to pin your fabric. And to pin the pattern pieces onto your fabric. You'll also need a seam ripper to make holes for your grommets, as well as rip out any stitches that you accidentally make the wrong way or screw up or something. And during this tutorial I did screw it up, but I didn't film it, so you won't see that. Just once. And you'll need matching thread that's pretty close to your fabric so that you won't see it, and a pair of nice fabric cutting scissors. That should be all that you need. You also need an iron, just to iron out your seams and make things flat and nice. So we're only going to be following the first couple pattern sewing directions. Here for tunic A, B, and C, we're just doing tunic C. So if you want to follow that, if you're not new to sewing and you want to follow that, go right ahead. But I skipped the stay stitching because we don't need it. So the first step for us is to cut out our pattern pieces. So after you've found your size, which is on the back of the envelope, gives you things to measure and find your size, and then it shows you how much fabric you need. You'll need your pattern piece number 1 and pattern piece number 2 for tunic. And we don't need the armhole facing because we're doing something else with ours. So now you gotta pin them to the fabric. Now both of these pieces need to go on the fold, and you need 2 of them. So here I am just pinning on the first 2 pieces here. So I need to do this twice. So I'm pinning on the little neck facing, which is very important because you need that. And then I'm pinning on piece number 1. Now I already cut out a smaller version, and this time I'm making a bigger one. So I had to kind of use the outline, but you'll be fine. Yours will be brand new. So here I've taken away the smaller one, and now I'm going to cut them out. So this is me cutting out the first piece. Cut along the edge. You cut it out carefully, following the line exactly. It's very important. And then, once I've got it cut out, there's notches in it, the little triangles. You can see them there. You need to cut those out. So you cut out the little triangle, like so. Just carefully cut through. There you go. And cut out the other one. And the other pattern piece has a lot of notches on it, but we only need to cut the notches out at the top because we're adapting this pattern a bit to make it Link's tunic rather than the tunic they have designed. So next, once you've got all your pieces, is cutting out the notches on the top of the pattern piece number 1. And as you can see, I'm unpinning the pattern piece because we don't need that anymore. And I've got 2 of them. So I took the pattern piece and I cut out another one. Now, you should iron the crease in the back of these because it's really annoying, trust me. I made a blue water link tunic a while ago, and the crease in the middle bugged me to no end. So iron it before you sew anything together and you'll be good to go. So next, first sewing step is sewing the shoulder pieces together. So you want the right sides together. So the side that you want to show outside needs to face each other. And my fabric, you can only tell when you're pretty close to it because there's a difference in weave, but if you got like suede or something really nice, you'll be able to tell which side is which. When you get fabric, the inside is always the best side, so they'll give you a roll of fabric folded. So the outside is the bad side. So I'm pinning them perpendicular to the way I'm sewing. I'm going to go in a straight line across that, and the pins are going to be facing up and down. That way I can sew straight over them and hold the thing all together while I'm sewing. Because if you pin the other way, the pins will get caught and it'll be not nice. So here I am going to sew it. Now you got a back stitch, which is do a couple stitches forward. I'm just doing it manually with the winding of my machine there. Hold down your button to go back, depending on what kind of machine you got. And now I'm ready to sew forward. So as you see, the pins are sideways, so I'm going to go straight over them and not even care. So just go carefully. So across the shoulder seam. Now that's just one seam. You got to do the other one as well. And then you'll have sort of like an apron almost, and then back stitch at the end again, because that's very important. That holds the seam together so it won't come apart. And then just, cut the strings off. You can see it's sewed there. And the notches that we cut help you line it up. So here I've got it on my ironing board, and that's the seam. I'm unfolding it and ironing it flat. That's going to help me line up other things, like the neck facing, which is very important. Every time you make a seam, you want to iron it flat. That's kind of rule number 1. So here's the neck facing. 2 little pieces. So you have to sew these pieces at the end together. Remember, right sides together. Good sides facing each other. See, right now you can see that's the bad side of the fabric, and in there is the good side. So I'm pinning them together so I can sew them. I just need to sew across 2 sides. Now I've sewn them together and I've ironed it flat. You may be able to tell now what's the good side and what's the bad side. The good side is the piece that's folded there. It's that piece. That's the good side showing. And the bad piece is the part that's got all the lines on it. That's how I can tell, for me. Of course, you can only tell up close. So next piece, now we have to sew along the side. We have to fold it over just a little bit and sew around the entire thing. Now you're doing the unnotched edge, so the big around the outside. You can see it on your sewing directions as well. That's number 3. And I'm sewing on the bad side. You can see, because you can see the ugly seams that I flattened. So there you go, that's how it's gonna look. We're looking at the bad side, the side that we won't see when we wear it. It's on the edges opposite the notches. And here is, I'm pinning it to the tunic itself. So I'm pinning it with right sides together. So you're seeing the good side of the tunic and the bad side of the neck facing. Using the notches that you cut out earlier, line them up and pin around the neck. Now, because it's round, you're probably going to want to use a round surface to pin it on. I find using your knee really works. So there, I just got it laid across my knee and I'm pinning it down carefully. And take care, especially on the corners, because you don't want any extra fabric. You want it to line up perfectly. So be very careful when doing that. And now I'm going to sew it on. So we're sewing it on 5/8, which is the one line on the bottom of your machine. You should see it. And so I'm sewing all the way around, and you got to be careful not to get any tucks or folds or ruin your fabric underneath by sewing it together. So just got to make sure you got it all laid out properly. Don't want any extra fabric getting caught anywhere. So here I am coming up on the corner, and I'm just making sure the fabric's all lined up. And making sure it's all smooth and flat. Just pushing it around the corner there. You always gotta maneuver your fabric as well. So I'm just carefully moving it each time to make sure I'm still 5/8 away from the edge at all times. Just about finished. So here, after you've sewn it on, you need to trim the seam. So you need to cut a bit off of it so that you can fold it easier. And clip the corners. So I'm just carefully cutting around, not getting too close to the thread, sort of cutting the seam allowance in half. And then I need to clip the corners as well. So you just cut little notches out of the corner, every about 2 fingers apart. These corners are really tricky, and you want to make sure that they fold in properly. As you can see, it's pretty tricky. You gotta really maneuver it into position. So I'm starting to get it there. Still gotta cut it some more. Now this is when I folded it all in and I've ironed a bit of it. So that's what it's gonna look like. That's the good side, that's the outside of your tunic. It's looking nice and smooth and flat, and that's, you can slip it over your head to see, you know, if it fits and if it's long enough and everything. Then you have to top stitch. So you're sewing on the good side of your fabric this time, and you're sewing around the neck hole just to hold the facing in place, so that it's all good for you to put on the trim right after. So I'm pinning the trim carefully, same way I pinned the shoulders together, with the needles facing up and down. That way I can sew across them. And I've got my really good nice trim there. And carefully pinning. The corners are going to be tricky, but just make sure you fold it correctly. Or if your trim's really nice and you don't have to fold it and it just bends around the corner, lucky you. I had to fold mine into a bit of a square, but it worked. So I've sewn it all on, and at the end you can see that it has the one place you can tell where it's finished. That's on the back so that no one will see it from the front. And I folded the end of the trim underneath, that way it wouldn't fray and come apart. So just make sure you do that as well. The next piece is you take your tunic, make it inside out, so you got all the ugly seams facing out. And then you want to cut it in a T. Now you can cut it a little, you can cut it a lot, depending on, you know, how loose it is on you and how tight you want it, because this pattern doesn't really give us any sleeves. So you gotta you gotta make your own sleeves. So by cutting it in a T, it'll give the illusion of sleeves, and it'll be really nice. So you cut it in a nice little T, and then when you unfold it, it'll look like a t-shirt. Like I said, if you don't have this pattern, you can make a shape like this and sew them together, as I've done in the past. So now we need to hem it. So along the bottom edge, you need to make sure that you're folding it into the wrong side so that the nice side doesn't look ugly. So right now the nice side is facing out, so you're looking at the wrong side right now. And I've sewn it once, folding it a little bit just like we did on the neck facing, and then I folded it again so that it's not going to fray or anything. I had to cut it shorter because the person I'm making this for is not short. They're a little taller, so I needed to make the tunic short so that it would look like links. So next, once you've done the bottom, with the right sides facing together, of course, you need to pin along the T on each side. Make sure that you don't have it folded in half. And you're just gonna sew in a T like that, or I guess an L, not a T. You're gonna cut it in an L, sew it in an L. And then we need to make the slits along the bottom as well, because Link's tunic has slits in it. So you need to mark with a pen, like I have, right there, by the third needle, where you're gonna stop sewing and leave it open. And I measured it 7 inches. So it's got 7-inch slits on the sides. And I did that on both sides so that they would be the exact same length. So you want to start or stop at that little mark, little pen mark, and sew around the L. And then that corner where the sleeve is, you need to cut a V in it. That way when you fold it and when you press it with your iron, it'll look real nice. Then here I am sewing the slit. So you see that the seam there is ironed flat, and we still have the open piece. So you want to sew along the edge, keeping it open. So folding it over and sewing down. Like so. You can see the one side I have sewed, and the other side I haven't sewn yet. So you just sew across that line. Real easy. Now once you have all your slits done, it's time to put trim along the bottom. So the trim's going to go around each slit and around the bottom in one continuous line. And when you're finished, it should look like that, about, depending on what style you're going for. And here's another one showing that I put it around the neck, put it along the top for the sleeves, and I put it around the bottom. And here we are, I am hemming the sleeves. So you want to fold it, see that's the bad side, inside. You want to fold it inside and sew around it carefully to make your sleeves nice and finished on the edge. And you should use a zigzag and only fold it once. That way it'll look real nice and it won't fray on you. And that's what it's going to look like when you're finished sewing it. Nice and smooth. There's the zigzags along the edge. And now it's time to put the grommets in. This is a bit tricky. So you need your grommets, of course, however many you need. You need a hammer. And you need your seam ripper to cut the holes big enough for the grommets to fit through. So mark where they're going. That way you know exactly where you're putting them and where you're cutting the holes in your fabric. Because once you cut a hole, it can't be erased. So grommets have one piece with a longer stem on it and one with a shorter one. You'll be able to tell the difference. So you put the one with the longer one on the outside, on the good side, poking through the bad side. And then on the bad side, you put in the smaller grommet. And then you put your little grommet tool in there and you hammer it together using the handy dandy hammer. And there I've done the 4, or I guess the 8 on the front. That's just rough. And you need to work on a hard flat surface, of course. So next is putting the cord through to make it look like stitching. Not too difficult. You just thread it through all 4 or 8. And then just tie it on the back. That way no one will see any tying on the front and it'll look real nice. Then I put 4 on the sleeves on each side. And trust me, that looks pretty impressive when you do that. So there's the one finished sleeve end. It's got the 4, just needs the cord through it like that. And here is all of them done. You also need to do 4 along the top edge of these slits. And here I am wearing it. So thanks for watching, and see you guys for another tutorial.